Hi, I'm Ann Fraser. Welcome to another edition of Bringing Hope to Alzheimer's. Today we are sitting down with Dr. Ann Morgan, and she has some great information for us today about supplements. So welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Thank you. So supplements are so huge as far as there's so many things you could take. You could watch a video, a TikTok video, a YouTube short or whatever, and this is great for you, this is great for you, this is great for you. And before you know it, you're like, that's 18 things that I could take in one day. Yeah. So can you help us simplify this and talk about supplements? And let's really also hone in on supplements that are great for your brain.
Okay. Yeah, this is one of my favorite topics. This is one of my favorite things to do for my patients because most of the people that are coming to me for my advice are people that are already pretty interested in their health. And so they've been down that rabbit hole and they've listened to all the different things and they've purchased all the things. And now they've spent lots and lots of money and they have a cabinet full of things. And then what happens is we develop pill fatigue. And I can't remember where I first heard that, but it's such a real thing. When we are faced with taking, 15 supplements a day, it gets a little, I don't know, you just feel a little uneasy about doing it. So I think there's a good way to streamline things. So now my list that I have to talk about for brain health is, it's extensive, but we can also find a lot of what we're looking for in a supplement in our diet. So supplements are never a substitute for good nutrition, but we can talk about what foods we would look for, and then if we're not getting enough of those foods, what supplements we would take. And I think there's also an interesting difference between what supplements you want to focus on for prevention, and even people that have a diagnosis would want to take these every day as well to prevent further decline. And then there are a few supplements you can take just that day to help you perform and focus better. So those wouldn't be something you would have to take every day. So it makes it a little less daunting when we talk about this long list of supplements.
Right. Okay.
So foods, of course, some of the most important foods would be omega-3s. So you find those in fish, your healthy fats, your avocados, nuts, seeds, that kind of thing, coconut oil. Those are really, really important fats because actually fat is important. I grew up in the fat-free age and, in
70s. Yep.
Oh, and on into the 90s. I mean, when I was in college, I ate a diet of chicken breasts and Smarties. I love Smarties. And so I thought, well, they're fat-free. And of course, I was 20 pounds overweight and I couldn't figure out why. But now we're finally getting rid of that stigma with fat. And actually our brain, we used to think that glucose and sugar is what not bad sugar, but our chemical neurotransmitter for our brains was glucose. That was what we were taught in medical school when I was there 20 to 30 years ago. But what we're finding out now is it's actually fat. Fat is a better food for our brain. And so fat is important. And again, those healthy fats that we talked about, not the highly processed seed oils and things like that. So if we can't get enough fat in our diet, we would want to supplement with an omega-3. So a good quality omega-3 would be important. Vitamin D is important for absolutely everyone. And this goes for, I always say, it's my most important supplement I think we can take, and it actually is important for everyone in your family. My granddaughter is almost a year old, and I have her on vitamin D because it is absolutely important for brain development and then keeping your brain healthy ongoing. And there's so many benefits of vitamin D. Thiamine is important. Thiamine we generally get in our diet pretty well, or if we're taking a good quality multivitamin, it will be there. So rarely do you have to take a dedicated thiamine supplement. But interestingly, the reason we know thiamine is really good for our brains is that alcoholics have a malabsorption of thiamine and they will get a certain syndrome. It's called Wernicke-Korsakoff's. And the first thing you do when you in the emergency room, which was my background, is you give that patient thiamine and they immediately come out of this delirium that they're in. It's fascinating. So thiamine is really important for the brain. And then vitamin E can be really good as well. Zinc, nicotinamide riboside is a really important supplement. You may have heard of it's a pretty big wellness topic right now to boost your NAD levels. And when you boost your NAD levels, and you can do that a couple different ways, you can take something called nicotinamide riboside or another supplement called NMN. And when we take those supplements, we boost our NAD levels, which then makes every cell in our body more efficient. So our brain cells as well. And we build better and better mitochondria. And then those cells function better. So that's important. And then choline. Choline is really good for the brain as well. So those are ones that I would say are super important to either get in your food or sometimes the supplement is needed.
So a lot of people will ask the question, if you have a really good quality multivitamin, would that take care of some of those things, or would that be in addition to those things?
A really good quality multivitamin could take care of potentially the choline, the zinc. C, I didn't mention, C is important for your brain health as well. So you could probably find a very good quality multivitamin that has those things covered, the thiamine. You always need a dedicated D. There is never enough D in a combination pill. Even something that's good for your bones or a bone health pill with calcium and magnesium and D, it's not going to be enough D for your overall health. So we always need a dedicated D. And then again, if you're not eating a lot of fatty fish, so salmon, mackerel, sardines, the smaller fish, then you want to take an omega-3.
So when you take D, isn't D supposed to be taken with K2? Right, because it's more absorbable.
Absolutely.
Right.
So D3 with K2. And most, if you're getting recommendations from a provider that is aware of this, then they're going to recommend something like that.
So I have two questions. The first one is, a lot of people will just go run to their local superstore and they're going to pick some of these up. What is the difference between those and really good sourced supplements?
Well, I think there can be a big difference. Every once in a while, I'll see a patient that takes the regular superstore vitamins that actually has some decent blood levels when I check things like vitamin B12, which is super important for our brain, which is actually, I didn't talk about. Vitamin B12 is super important for our brain, folic acid. But most of the time, they're just not as bioavailable. They may be put into a tablet that has a lot of filler in it, and it takes a while for that to break down. And so you're not going to absorb it as well. And so you want to use a very clean company that has usually a vegetable clear capsule, and that will break down really easily, and those nutrients get into your system a lot easier. So that's one of the big differences. Another is age and climate control. We have no idea when we buy something off the shelf at the store how long it may have been on that shelf, and particularly how long it was in the warehouse before it got there, and how long it was on a hot truck. You know, it's August right now as we're taping this, and it might have sat on a hot truck for even a couple hours, and the temperature difference will change the composition of the supplement.
Okay, so if you're getting vitamins, so you're a functional integrative medicine doctor, correct? So for those people who don't know, so the difference between it is you can go to your local practitioner and they may know a whole lot too. Not saying anything bad about that, but your focus is preventative, and it's also, if somebody does have something going on, it's not just throwing necessarily a prescription at it, but figuring out what is the root cause and how can we fix that as naturally as possible. So we're not just treating the symptoms, we're treating the root cause.
True. That's always my first focus.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So with that as our background, why do many people, many doctors who are super smart don't do some of this preventative type things? Why does your regular doctor, your general practitioner or your internist or whatever, why are they not suggesting some of these things that could be really helpful for the average person?
That's a good question. They probably don't know, and that's unfortunate. I always say your doctor doesn't know what your doctor doesn't know, and that's not their fault. For me, my background was emergency medicine. I did that for 25 years, but I had to go and seek out the knowledge that I've gained. It wasn't handed to me. It certainly wasn't handed to me in medical school. And then, every year doctors have to take what we call continuing medical education courses, and that's to get enough of our CME, is what that is the acronym for that. And we get enough hours that we can renew our medical license every year. But we get to choose whatever we want that to be. And if you're a cardiologist, you're going to be studying the different, drugs, most likely, that are indicated for your patients. And so you're staying on top of your specialty, but you're not getting a wider scope. There's no one that's knocking on your door to say, hey, choline is really good for my brain. And, can you, what do you know about this? They aren't going to know. And that's unfortunate. I believe, I'm very optimistic that 20, 30 years from now, that'll be taught in medical school. There's enough actual research that's happening surrounding these nutritive supplements and food But I think it will be taught someday. So I'm hopeful. Right now, your doctor just doesn't know. And that's okay. Maybe you could introduce that to your doctor. I think that's a good conversation to have.
Right.
Share resources with your providers that you come across. There are some really great books out there. There's great podcasts to listen to that really are research-based, not just the latest wellness trend.
Right.
So there's some really good things happening out there right now.
This episode is brought to you by Thrive Once More. And I'm going to tell you a personal story because Thrive Once More, I was looking for a new functional medicine, integrative medicine doctor, and I found Dr. Ann Morgan. She was a ER doctor for 22 years and got tired of seeing people come in so sick and just being able to treat the symptom that was happening at the moment and not really the inside of the body. So she started her own practice called Thrive Once More, where she helps men and women figure out what medical issues are going on in the body and how to get to the root cause so you can actually heal and not just take a pill or do something that's going to just treat the symptom and not the problem. So Thrive Once More, Dr. Ann Morgan, she's my personal doctor. If you want to make an appointment for just a quick consultation, you can go to thriveoncemore.com. And we want to thank her for being a supporter of this podcast. I've said many times before, but many of the people in my family are in medicine, whether they're nurses, doctors, surgeons, whatever. And they said that their whole nutrition course in med school was like 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah. Oh,
that's it.
That surprises me.
Yeah.
2 or 3 days feels a little more appropriate to me if I think back.
And maybe it was 2 or 3 days, but
I mean, it's barely there. And again, our nutrition advice changes, and I think we finally have it right. Actually, that we've been through a lot of trends, like we already talked about. The fat-free trend was really wrong. I feel like we have it really right now. And things like intermittent fasting and healthy fats and kind of a lower processed food, low carb kind of diet is probably what will stick for a while. So yeah, but it's sadly misrepresented when it comes to medical education.
Okay. So when we go to the store and we're buying things, you have a fun little saying about the 3 Bs. Tell us about that.
So if you can avoid things that come in a box, in a bag, or with a barcode, then you are in really good shape. Basically going to be eating whole foods. And that's the way to eat. Is we talked, I know we've talked before about my 5 ingredient list. If you're getting something in a bottle, which I guess is a B, but if it has 5 ingredients or less, then it's probably a decent choice. It's cleaner. So we're just looking for really just whole foods.
Okay, very good. And we've all been told that you want to shop more the exterior, outside portion of the store instead of in between. But it was funny, after I heard you say the 3 Bs and you said barcode, now they used to know that people that checked you out knew what every code was, and they didn't. And now they all have that little barcode on there.
I know, they do. They do.
So with the exception of that, right?
Yes, that doesn't work for fruit. Yes, and vegetables.
Right.
We have barcodes now.
No, that's funny. But so let's just talk just a little bit more about supplementation. If somebody doesn't know, what's going on, and they really do need to understand, what's a good resource for people to go to?
There are quite a few. I think for women, Dr. Lisa Mosconi is a neuroscientist who's studying the female brain, and she also is a nutritionist. And so she's actually written a book for how to eat for your brain for women. And honestly, there isn't a whole lot of nuance to how we eat between our 2 genders. So really it fits for men as well. So she's a good resource. When I'm trying to get people to jumpstart their nutrition, I'll recommend the Whole30. I think is a great place to start. The Blue Zone book, I don't know if you're familiar with Blue Zones. Dr. Dan Buettner is his name, and he studied all of the longest living populations around the world and try to find a common thread with them. So that's a nice way to kind of focus our nutrition. The last thing I want to have my patients do is to feel like they have to go on a diet. And so when we start thinking about what we're taking in that really fuels our bodies and our brains, we then realize that's kind of how I want to eat for a lifetime. So really, unless they really need a jump start, the jump start, I usually recommend Whole30. Anything else, it can be a slow transition to getting into those healthy fats, produce, fiber, protein, and everything else. It doesn't have to be really hard to figure out. Sometimes it's hard to do. We have our cravings and our behaviors, but even those go away when we start to really fuel our body with nourishing food.
That's so true. When I go for periods of time and I don't have, for instance, really hardly any sugar in my diet, or I'll go for periods of time that I'm not being super strict because I'm not supposed to have gluten, and I've been really strict with that. And then you don't crave it, first of all. But then if you do end up having a little bit, it's awful.
It is.
You feel awful, and you're like, why did I do that?
Right.
So it takes a little bit to get there, but if you can hang in there, even sometimes several days with really zero sugar or very, very little, and you have something sweet, you will be disgusted by it. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
So.
And then if you have it again the second day, you're going to start craving it again. It's really weird. There's a chemistry there that happens. And I think that's okay. Every once in a while, I have days where I don't do great, and I usually feel bad the next day, and it just reminds me, oh yeah, this is why I do what I do. And that's okay. Sometimes we need a little reminder, and sometimes we make an educated choice. Well, I'm at my daughter's wedding. I want to have a piece of wedding cake. I know I may not feel good tomorrow, but I'm going to enjoy that cake. So we then actually put a little more, we enjoy our food, and we treasure that taste, and then we know we're not going to go back to it again the next day.
Exactly. Exactly. Or sometimes I find even just having a bite or two instead of the whole piece of cake.
Yep.
Sometimes just I'll enjoy that bite or two, but then I don't have quite the ramifications of it after that. So anyway, what else have we not talked about with supplements?
There are some supplements that I think could be good if you're looking for focus that day. So these aren't ones that necessarily help you prevent cognitive decline. But if maybe you don't have a formal diagnosis of cognitive decline, but maybe you just want to be sharp that day, because we all have our days where maybe we didn't sleep well, or maybe we had some sugar, or whatever. We've talked about some of those.
Or you have a really big meeting that you have to be super on for.
You have to be on.
Yeah.
You're recording a podcast. You want to be sharp. So things that you can take for that reason would be ginkgo biloba is really good. Huperzine A. A B complex is really important. Particularly methylcobalamin is important. That's the right type of B12 to take for good brain function. Bacopa is a kind of a new latest and greatest one. Lion's mane, we talked about reishi, I think, in another episode. Lion's mane can be good, rhodiola, and then ketones can be really good too. And that's kind of a thing, we hear about the ketogenic diet being really good for our brains. It's actually really good for mental health. It's good for epilepsy. People have fewer seizures when they eat a keto diet. But even if we're not on a keto diet, we can actually take a supplement of ketones that should make our brains a little sharper. So those are good ones.
Very good.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. That's really good. What else have we not talked about?
Well, one thing that I would think about, and this isn't supplements, this would be more medication, or even not so much do I need a prescription, but investigating whether you need a prescription. And so having a really good workup of your thyroid function can be important in determining what, if you're struggling at all with cognition. Certainly we've talked about menopause and the hormones before, but that warrants an investigation. And then that whole topic of insulin resistance and, the whole idea that maybe we would take something that might prevent us from developing insulin resistance, specifically metformin. And one thing I forgot to talk about was our gut. So that could be a whole other podcast. So I won't go deep into it. But a probiotic and probiotic-rich foods can absolutely be important for our brain health. There is absolutely a gut-brain connection. One of my favorite ways to illustrate that is if people don't believe that there's a connection between your gut and your brain, just remember back to junior high or high school when that good-looking person came in the room and you kind of got a little butterfly. There you go. That's your gut-brain connection. So there's definitely a connection there. So it's really important to treat our gut and populate it with the right types of bacteria.
So a probiotic, because that's another whole thing. So it's a deep dive, but let's just skim on the surface for a moment. So a probiotic, there's ones that you can get on the shelf at the store. Then there's ones that you can go get in the refrigerated section. And so many 4 billion, 5 billion, whatever. What do people get?
Okay. There are some good rules with them here. So you're looking for 4 or more strains. So the more bacteria, the better. So the more different types of bacteria, because that's what we're looking for. We're looking for diversity. So you want 4 or more strains of bacteria, and then you want 20 billion colony forming units or more. And so 20 billion sounds like a lot, but it actually is a much higher quality probiotic than typically what you can find at most grocery stores, which is usually around 5 billion.
Okay.
Yeah.
And does it matter if it's refrigerated?
They do make them shelf stable. So it's all if it's a good company, they should tell you whether theirs belongs in the refrigerator or not. So it's not necessary to buy one that's refrigerated. There are companies that make shelf-stable probiotics. I changed from a refrigerated one to one that I can just throw in my little pill case that I take with me.
Right.
Because it's just, I take it more often when it's with me during the day as opposed to in my refrigerator at home. So,
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
I don't think it's necessary, but you do want to follow the package directions.
Okay. Talk about probiotic foods.
Probiotic foods are wonderful. I have had a wonderful journey with kefir. I don't know if you know much about kefir or if even I've told you about my kefir before, but I love my kefir. So I make it at home, homemade. It's basically fermented milk, which sounds disgusting, but it's actually really good. It tastes a little bit like buttermilk. But you're looking for foods that have a fermentation process. So things we think about are sauerkraut, yogurt, pickles even are fermented. Those are the big ones. Kombucha can be something to drink. It does have some sugar in it, but it's usually low sugar. But those are some good ones.
All right, so that's a whole other topic we have to talk about. Your kefir.
I can share a link if you want.
Yeah, I would love it. I would love it. Well, supplements that are, like I said, it's a big, big topic. There's lots of things that people can take. Since we're just focusing on brain health, you've really brought out a lot of great ones. And if people want more information and they want to maybe see you as a doctor, then they could possibly get connected with you.
Sure.
So tell us how that goes.
Okay. You just go to my website, thriveoncemore.com, and there's a button that says schedule a consultation. And that's actually a call with my assistant. Her name is Anne, too. So I'm Anne. This is Anne. I have an assistant, Anne, and she is, we have a lot of Annes in my life, and I love them all. But Anne will then hop on the phone with you and just talk about the process and what it looks like and try to kind of screen for people that may not need my help. And so if she runs into someone that doesn't seem like they may be a good fit, then she schedules a call with me and I talk with them. And I will tell someone, I think you'd be better served here. And I usually try to offer some resources, but I can usually help hopefully quite a few people.
Right.
Yeah.
I've sent a lot of people your way and they've all had a great experience.
Oh, thank you.
I
love what I do.
Yeah, and you're very good at it.
Oh, thank you.
So wonderful. Well, there's a little bit about supplements today. I hope that's helpful for everyone listening. And we will look forward to our next time that we're able to talk with you. And thanks for being here today. All right.
Of course.
We'll see you guys next time on Bringing Hope to Alzheimer's.